Hello and welcome to your weekly podcast from Freestyle Media in partnership with the Magic 5. So, we all love swimming, but sometimes we don't like it, and sometimes we need a break. Sometimes we just need to exist on land for a while. And my guest this week has recently enjoyed some much needed time away from the heavy routine of being a full-time swimmer. It's the brilliant double medal winning Olympian Luke Greenbank. So thanks for coming on the podcast, Luke.
Thank you for having me.
No, you're welcome. It's great to meet you first and foremost. I really appreciate you doing this. But first question is, you're back in the pool now, right?
Yeah. So I got back in start of last week. So I just come up to the end of my second week back in. But yeah, feeling good, like feeling refreshed mentally and physically, and hopefully, like we can just build through here into next summer. But it's very much starting from the basics and then building up, which I think is definitely quite refreshing, certainly for me at this point in time.
Yeah, the one thing that I always think is if I've had like a bit of a break from any kind of sport, really, whether it's swimming or say especially the gym, actually, you go back and you do that first gym session, and the DOMs the next day are incredible. Like when you think you sort of get to a point with gym training where you don't feel the DOMs anymore. Like how did that first week back for you feel? Was it really exhausting compared to normal?
Yeah, I mean, I did like a few sessions in my time off, but nothing more than about 3K and just nice, easy swimming. So last week was the first kind of structured week that I've done. And to be honest, I felt all right in the pool. Definitely, like you said, after the gym, felt quite domsy. But starting to kind of get over that a little bit now. So I'm not as sore this week. But in terms of the pool, the first session back, well, first couple lengths back, just felt completely bizarre, really. Kind of struggled with catching the water and stuff. But then once you get into a rhythm, you start to kind of feel a bit more normal. And there's definitely, I've noticed that I'm not as fit as I was, but in other areas, I'm kind of more focused. For me, there's no expectation this first kind of week or two, or even this first few months. It's just trying to get back in and get fit. And it's quite nice to not have that expectation weighing on your shoulders, and yeah, it's been quite refreshing to kind of come back and just enjoy it as well.
Yeah, no, definitely. So obviously, I want to talk about your break and sort of get into all the context of that. But just listening to what you said about building back up has just made me think. Are you literally going back to the very basics of swimming and learning, just doing all sorts of like funny drills, just like you say, trying to get the catch, and like has it been quite experimental?
A little bit, yeah. I mean, I've had breaks in the past, but never this long. The first few sessions are very much nice, easy swimming. We're starting to build it up a little bit more this week, but still nothing like anywhere near kind of main set or anything like that. But for me, like one thing I really want to work on is just working on underwaters. So that's been kind of my personal aim over these sessions, and it's quite easy. So it's easier to get those underwaters perfected at this kind of intensity, and then as we build through, hopefully I can maintain that distance and that level of breath holding. So that's what I'm particularly focusing on myself. But there's areas around technique and stroke that Mel's kind of been giving me like reminders on, and something that again we'll just work through as we add more intensity as well.
Yeah, that sounds really interesting. And the fact that you're coming back into it fresh again and the intensity's dropped, and as you said earlier, there's no expectation at the moment. So again, probably or just the pressure doesn't seem that like it's there at the moment. Are you finding you've actually got a bit more maybe mental space to kind of tune into all of those things and work on specifics rather than thinking I just need to nail 6K today?
Yeah, absolutely. I think before I took my break, I was at a point whereby I was so hyper focused on swimming, and I couldn't almost see the world around me, and so many other factors that for the ordinary person seem so simple, but when you're kind of in the zone, and you've been kind of so focused on something for such a long time, you can't really take that step back and kind of think like, okay, maybe if I did this, it'd be different, or maybe I did this, it'd be different. It's always like you're always on the go.
Yeah.
And I think like the fact that it's been a very busy kind of 2 years since the Olympics, especially last summer, extremely busy. Took a break, but nothing kind of like I had now. And it was just trying to like build on everything that I'd done. There were some good parts last summer. There was some not so good parts last summer, and it's just I was just chasing that improvement. But I feel like taking this break now has been the best thing that could have happened to me because it's allowed me to take a step back, reevaluate, kind of get things a little bit more structured and what's the word, kind of structured away from the pool really,
Yeah.
which has helped me kind of get out of that bubble that is the swimming, kind of elite swimming world,
Yeah.
which is
Just get
definitely needed.
as well, greater perception of everything else that's going on.
Absolutely, and yeah, it's been really good to kind of, like I said, take that step back and just assess. And I think I'm now in a better position to perform next year
Yeah.
than I would have been had I just carried on swimming. Really.
Yeah, no, I can imagine, and it's interesting because I've never experienced being a full-time swimmer before. So, for me, when I'm going to go and train, sort of maybe an hour before, I'm starting to think about the session, and I'm getting my bag ready, and just all the simple things really. But you're sort of mentally starting to switch onto it, and then you go training, and you're all in, you're totally consumed, and then that drive home from the session as well, you kind of like debriefing it in your mind a bit. But for me, I come home and then it's like, okay, time for bed, and then I've got work tomorrow, or I've got whatever else going on. But I can actually imagine like, that feeling I have for a couple of hours, you kind of just have all the time, right? And that must be quite intense.
Yeah, I mean, you tend to overthink things when you're in that kind of space as well, and you kind of massively like think like it's the be all and end all, and it's really not. Like, obviously, swimming is a huge part of my life, and I enjoy it. That's why I do it. I love it.
Yeah.
But if I don't perform, it's not the end of the world,
Mm.
and that's something that this break's helped me realize. And like to kind of when I was going through that kind of that pinpointed like can't focus on anything else phase, it was like this is all that matters.
Mm.
Like I owe this to so many people. I owe this to myself. I owe this to whatever. But now that like kind of and to be honest, like even the first few days after I didn't make the world's team this year, I was devastated, gutted, just didn't know what to do with myself. But having that time to step away, reevaluate, I'm definitely in a much better place now, and I can kind of feel like I'm much more mature with regards to how I deal with it, and also realize that like yes, people want me to do well, friends and family want me to do well, but at the end of the day, like they're still going to care about me no matter what. And yeah, you get comments about like, oh, he's not doing well, like yeah, but it doesn't matter. Like, and I think again, taking a step back from that it's just it's refreshing, very refreshing.
Yeah. So it was a personal choice, was it, to have a break? And what I mean by that is, was it a complete and utter I need a break, or were there conversations with Mel and with other people saying, do you know what, there's a bit of a gap in the schedule now, might be a good time to go and have a break, or was this you just saying I want a break?
It was definitely there's definitely discussions, but
Yeah.
it was discussions that happened right after I didn't make the team. Like as soon as I finished my swim and I came third, and I realised because if I'd
Yeah.
come second, I would have gone to Worlds, probably pushed through, maybe
Mm.
would have got some kind of result at Worlds, but I still don't think I would have been in as good a position next year. And it was very much okay, this is where we're at now.
Mm.
Take a few days to deal with it, and then we're going to work out how we're going to come back from this and be better than we were before. Which, like I said, definitely I think is has happened.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, you'd have loved to have gone to the Worlds, but you're not going, and you've just had a few months off. And given everything that you've been able to experience, and we'll get onto it all shortly, but given everything that you've been able to experience the last few months, are you kind of glad actually that that you had that maybe instead of the Worlds? I know that's a difficult question because you'd love to be at the Worlds, but are you able to see it from that positive point of view?
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. The stuff I've been doing on my break has just been fantastic. Like I feel like I really made the most of it. At the start, I just didn't have a plan. I didn't know what to do. The way I described it was if I was to draw what was going on in my head, it'd be like grabbing a pencil and then just scribbling all over the paper, or like a big ball of yarn that's just been like kind of rolled up and it's all a mess. And then the first few weeks were kind of spent unraveling that, and then I got this plan in order, and I started to feel like, oh, okay, yeah, this is actually the way to go. But I think that just comes from, like I said before, being so hyper focused on one thing, just like kind of broadening your horizons a little bit, and kind of getting a bit more perspective. It's definitely very, very well. It's something that I think goes underappreciated in the sporting world. Just having that little bit of outlet.
Definitely. I mean, broadening your horizons and broadening your geography as well. So
Yeah,
you went out to Africa, to Zambia. I
yeah.
saw your Instagram post, and that's what that prompted me to get in touch with you. Looks like you had a fantastic couple of weeks there. Just talk to us about those few weeks, and how did that even come about in the first place?
So yeah, it's a charity called Sport in Action that Mel has done a lot of work with in the past. She went out as a student and she's done a lot of fundraising for them. Um, so at the start of this break, I had basically I had to get a minor surgery, and then I was going to go home for a little bit. And then at the end, she was like, "Oh, if we can we? Do you want to go out to Zambia?" And I was like, "Yeah," because it's always something that I've wanted to do. Like, there's been opportunities to do similar things through school, but I've never had the opportunity because of commitments to swimming. But yeah, she was like, "Okay, we'll try and get you out there." So this time every year, students from 5 or 6 universities go out and help with this charity, and they help with the not to run the sessions in the local communities, but to help the coaches in the local communities develop and make the sessions more sustainable, trying to increase participation, particularly in girls, and
Yeah.
all sorts of stuff like that. It's an amazing charity. And to go out there and kind of experience and help out was absolutely fantastic. It's something, like I said, I've always wanted to do, but never had the opportunity to do. And it was, again, such a big kind of change of perspective. Um,
Mm.
and it's something that I now feel like I can do work for in the future, whether that be through fundraising or going out again and doing something similar. Um, it was just an absolutely fantastic experience, and the people I met and from Zambia and the volunteers were all absolutely amazing. And yeah, I almost didn't want to come home at the end. It was so much fun.
Yeah. I mean, the photos themselves, just a couple of photos look really good. Did you find as well that, you talked a lot about the hyper focus that you've had in swimming, and, you're a professional swimmer, so you have to be serious, you have to take it seriously. But did you find actually hanging with the kids that were just playing sport for fun, and there was just a total joy and innocence with it? Did that kind of make you sit back and go, oh yeah, like maybe forgotten how that felt?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I've always said that I'm incredibly lucky to be where I am in terms of swimming, because this started off as a hobby and I now get to do it for my job. But again, when you're in that hyper focus phase, you kind of lose sight of that a little bit. And I kept telling myself it, but I'm not sure I really believed it. And
Mm.
kind of going out there and seeing that, and yeah, like I said, working with the coaches and the students made me kind of realize that I am, again, very lucky, and kind of made me did so kind of allowed me to believe in that again, really.
Yeah. No, I mean, it sounds fantastic, and you talk about perception. It's those kind of things always give you a great grounding, don't they? When you get to see a completely different environment and actually see what other people have, whether it's in a different country or in this country or whatever. So that's fantastic. And I mean, you had a couple of months off. You were out there for a few weeks. You said you had some minor surgery to start with. What else were you doing in your time off to break? Were you able to just completely forget about swimming?
Yeah, I mean, I kind of yeah, had this surgery, so it was kind of 10 days just rest um, in and around Loughborough, and then went back home up to Cumbria, obviously near the Lake District. Just live just outside the Lake District, so kind of set myself a little challenge to climb the Wainwright. So that I think it's 214 fells in the Lake District. So I got about 20 of them done when I was at home, but I'll keep like scratching them off as I go back. So that was good. Like again, that kind of helped me to settle into having this break, yeah, and like I kind of mentioned before, unwinding that wall and just get a bit more headspace, but it also helped with a bit of routine. Obviously, like when we're training, we've got a set routine that we do week in week out, and to go from that to nothing is quite bizarre, really. I'm sure a lot of people find that even with kind of work and stuff, but it was nice to have a little bit of something to work towards, but have sorry, but to not be focused on swimming. It was kind of like that nice balance of having a bit of downtime, but still maintaining some form of activity. Really.
Yeah, those fells that you talked about, did you run them or did you just walk them?
No, I just walk them. I don't think my ankles are built for running, let alone on
Fair enough.
fells.
Yeah, no, fair enough. Fell running's something that I actually really want to start doing. I've just moved to Derbyshire this year, and well, I say Derbyshire, actually in the Peak District. So
Okay.
yeah, we've kind of we've climbed a few hills and mountains, but just by foot. But it's something I'd like to give it a go on a weekend. Maybe just do a little 5K fell run.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I've got a few friends that do it, but it sounds absolutely brutal. So it's not for me. I'll just walk.
I know for sure. Did you still dip your toes in the water at all over the few months, or was it a complete clean break?
So I was out of the water completely for about no, longer than that, probably about 6 to 8 weeks.
Right.
Probably 6 weeks, and then I did one session at home with my old club, and then I think maybe three or four back down in Loughborough just before I left for Zambia.
Yeah.
But
And how did you feel when you were when you were off? Because one thing that I feel, and listen, I'm a master swimmer, I'm not a pro swimmer at all, but if ever I have some time off, if I'm on holiday or whatever, and it's not just swimming, it's the gym, it's all that kind of routine that you kind of build yourself up throughout the year on, don't you? And then if you have some time away, you do sometimes have those days where you think, oh God, I'm falling behind. It's going to be tough when I get back, and just a little bit of anxiety can creep in. Did you feel any of that, or were you actually just quite glad of the break?
um, probably a little bit towards the start, and then once I settled in, I realised that this was probably the best thing for me. It kind of went from feeling like I need to do something to okay, this is okay to I'm definitely not ready to get back in yet, and then built up slowly to okay, this is probably a good time to do a little bit of training. Realizing that I hadn't lost loads of, I had obviously lost fitness, but it wasn't like I was dying in the water my first session back. So that kind of gave me a bit of confidence, and then
Mm.
yeah, gradually a smooth transition back into training. We're still not at full training yet. Just I think we're on 7 sessions this week. We usually do 10.
Yeah.
So it's still plenty of time to go and plenty of time to build. But honestly, I think if we get going too early, it's just gonna tire me out again. So it's there's conversations having with Mel all the time about how I'm feeling,
Yeah.
what we think we can do, and I feel like I'm mature. I've been through enough and like old enough and mature enough now to kind of give constructive input into those conversations. I think as in the past I've maybe shied away from that, but
Mhm.
yeah, definitely the communication between me and Mel now is quite good. Especially after this break as well. I think I can give a little bit more insight in terms of what I need to do away from the pool or what I need to do for the rest. Because that was actually a big thing before I took the break, was just trying to find something that I can do away from the pool so that I'm not hyper focused all the time,
Yeah.
and I'm not always in that bubble. So yeah, that, kind of going out to Zambia and having this like affiliation with Sport in Action, um, and potentially having something to plan and do in terms of fundraising in the future, definitely kind of has filled that hole. But I think there's certainly other things as well we can look towards.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, from quite a few points of view, it sounds like this break is going to do you the world of good because it's helped you think about the future. You know, after swimming, hopefully that's a long time away. But even from the point of view, if you've never had a break like this before, you'd have never have known what it would have been like to have a break. You know, maybe you'd have had some fears around having too much time off, but now you've done it and you're getting back into it, and maybe you've gone actually. I mean, so I know there was COVID, so we all kind of went through that, but we kind of went through that together, so it almost doesn't
Yeah,
count. Everyone was just kind of in the same position, but actually, you know, moving on for the next 5+ years in your career, you'll know the times now to just step away and just go. Do you know
mm.
what? Even if it's just weeks, need a few weeks off, and you'll be okay with that. And I think that's really important.
Yeah, absolutely. I think you've hit the nail on the head there, really. Um, and also, like with regards to the COVID, like the amount of time I had out of the water there is probably similar to what I've had out now, and I'm getting in maybe a little bit later, but sort of similar time. And then I had um, a long build up into Olympic year, and that's when I saw my best. So it's kind of reassuring to have done that in the past, and then to be able to do it in the future as well.
No, that's a good point actually, and hopefully the same thing happens here for sure. That's what we'll all be hoping for you.
Yeah,
Um, in the years that you've kind of been a part of British swimming since you kind of went full time as a pro, have you noticed a general shift in attitude towards the idea of having a break? Because I get the impression the old school mentality was just relentlessness, was just all about meters, grind. But do you feel like the attitude has maybe changed over the years? I mean, it sounds like Mel's a great advocate for it.
yeah. I mean, I think um, Mel's probably changed her attitude a little bit in the last few years as well. I mean, obviously she'll encourage us to get back in when we need to get back in, but certainly in my instance, she was definitely a big believer in having this time off right now. Um, and it's something that I've never really done as a swimmer. I've always kind of trained right through. And in hindsight, probably would have been a good idea to take a big break post Olympics. But with
Mhm.
ISL, it just never really crossed my mind.
Yeah.
Um, but again, like these things all happen for a reason. Like I'm having my break now, I feel like I'm in a good place, and um, I think hopefully I can feed that back into to anyone who's kind of going through the same thing that I have been through, in terms of like performance and stuff, and just taking that step back a little bit. I think there's plenty of examples of this happening in the past, with other swimmers. So it's not like it's a brand new thing, but it's kind of nice to have that first hand experience if anyone does need advice on it. And I think Mel's obviously seen what it's done for me. The world of good it's done for me, and again, that's a lot of experience for her, dealing with swimmers down the road as well.
Yeah, no, I genuinely think it'll benefit yourself
Mm.
and Mel and probably, as you say, so many other people around you if they've seen that you've had a break, and then fingers crossed you go on to be really successful over the next couple of years or whatever, especially at Paris. People will be able to go, do you know what? Actually, he did it. I can do it, and I think that's going to be a really really important thing. So you are back now. We kind of touched earlier on about how it's felt in terms of some of the stuff you've been doing. You're easing your way back in, but do you feel like you've had the break that you needed, and are you sort of raring to go again?
Yeah, absolutely. I think if you'd asked me the same question before Zambia, I would have maybe said I need a couple more weeks or a little bit more time. But
Yeah.
no, definitely, I think this was perfect, really. And to come back in now and have a slow build, I think I'm not ready to go straight back into like 6K sessions or anything like that. Um, I think I need to kind of be able to enjoy the summer, and not be kind of exhausted by training. But come September, I think we're ready to hit the ground running. And like I kind of mentioned before, just replicate that COVID year in the lead up to Olympics, and just kind of appreciate like I said before, appreciate that this used to be a hobby and the enjoyment side of it a little bit more as well.
Yeah, definitely. It's interesting because when you look around the world at all some of the best swimmers on the planet at the moment, you've got Kyle Chalmers is sort of doing a couple of days a week on a construction site. I mean, obviously, I don't know these guys' personal stories, but it sounds like he's kind of working a few days a week there. He says that's for his mental health to get him away from the pool, give him a different focus. We know that Caleb Dressel's had some time away. I mean, this is just a couple of examples, and then obviously you've done it as well. Why from your perspective, what is it about swimming that is so relentless that kind of makes you think, Christ, I need to get away from this?
I think just the fact that it's so repetitive, the training is so repetitive and quite grueling at times. Don't get me wrong, like I love the training, but when you're doing the same thing day in, day out with nothing changing, I can understand why people want to get away from it, myself included. Again, like I said, I need to find something to do away from the pool, just to kind of get that escape and keep that vision broader, rather than, like I mentioned before, like focusing in on just the swimming. It's just having that perspective is so important.
I mean, I can relate to the repetitive nature of it because I'm 30 now, and I've had 4 or 5 different jobs in my career so far, and I've only been working 8 years. So every couple of years I'm like, right, time for a change. Whereas like you guys, well, this is what I do, right? So whether that's for 10 years, 15 years, or whatever. And I'm sort of talking to the point where, I mean, you're doing it for a lot longer than as an age grouper as well. But from the point of, say, being 18, as sort of thinking, right, this is my job now.
Yeah, I was actually having a conversation with Mel this morning, just briefly, and she kind of mentioned that this Olympic cycle is going to look so different to the last Olympic cycle. You almost have to forget everything you've done, because I think for all of us that have been through it, like, we're different people, we're older, a little bit more experienced, but with that, you've, like I kind of mentioned, you've done the same training for even longer. So it's just trying to keep that motivation. I think that's the most important thing. As long as the training's up to standard, it's great. But I think in order to do that, you do have to have that little outlet away from the pool.
Yeah. Well, what's the biggest thing that you would say you've learnt from having time away?
I think it's my management of where I put my energy, in terms of, like, not necessarily like, sorry, I say my energy, where I put my, like, kind of, what's the word?
Just your sort of your overall focus and ambition.
Focus, that's the word. Yeah. So, like, away from the pool, I think it can be invested in other things. And at the end of the day, the main thing that matters is to kind of be happy. And not to say I wasn't happy away from the pool before, but I think just having that kind of structure and kind of those benefits away from the pool are definitely something that I now feel like I have a bit more of an understanding about.
Yeah, for sure. And then in terms of thinking about, I don't know if you've had these conversations yet with Mel or if you've even thought about this, but you talked about the repetitive nature of swimming, and it is repetitive, and it kind of has to be to an extent. But are there things that you would like to change now moving forward? Are you thinking, actually, I've got so many miles in the bank over all these years, I can afford to make some changes and it'd be beneficial?
Yeah, potentially. I haven't really thought too much about what the specifics of training look like. And in fact, there's a lot of things we did Olympic year that I would like to revisit. But there are definitely things that I think can be improved. And that's more, not so much around the specifics of training, but the stuff around the edge. So if that's like planning kind of more long weekends and mini breaks not early in the season, but like get them booked in early in the season, so you can kind of take a break and organise to do something away from the pool that weekend. That's a conversation we've kind of had briefly. So yeah, Mel was well on board with that as well.
Yeah, so am I. Sounds fantastic. Going away for the weekend. Final question before we go to questions from the listeners. Actually, was again, you've probably not mapped it all out mentally as well as literally, but obviously Paris next year. Have you got? Is there anything else kind of coming up in the meantime that's piquing your focus, or are you starting to think Paris now? You know, you've got things kind of blocks along the way, but is it kind of Paris, or is it not Paris yet because those are the things?
I think Paris is obviously the main goal, but still got to get there first. And I think if you think
Yeah.
too far ahead in the future, you can kind of get lost in it.
Mm.
And sometimes it can be a bit daunting, not really understanding how you're going to get from this point to this point. But
Yeah.
um, it's kind of good to kind of have a bit of a plan and a structure of what training looks like and what competitions we might have. So, like I said, this is just a building phase, get fit, and then come September, probably knuckle down a little bit more. Just start to kind of get even more fitness, a lot of aerobic meets under our belt, then potentially meet short course meet just before Christmas,
Yeah.
and then that second cycle building into the Olympic trials, and hopefully third cycle just kind of refining it and building again into the Olympics.
Yeah, no, that sounds fantastic, and I've come away feeling energized about the fact that you've had a great break, and obviously love watching you swim and love watching you do well. So I'm
Yeah.
glad the break's gone well for you, and hopefully, it will pay dividends.
Thank
So
you.
I put a message. I put a message on the group on Facebook to the listeners to say that you're coming on, and if they've got any questions for you, to get them in. So I've tried to put them in a sort of order of because there's a few questions around when you're racing, around pre-race. So I've tried to put them in a bit of an order. So the first question is, what is your race plan for the 200, and what's your self-talk throughout?
So for me, it's all about staying quite calm in terms of pre-race, and just putting my like faith in the training that I've done and controlling those nerves and kind of bigging myself up. That's like my ideal strategy for racing, and just trusting in the training. But it's completely different for everyone. Some people like to listen to music, get themselves as hyped up as possible. But for me, I need to be focused. I have a race plan, which is kind of just to build through the 200,
Yeah.
start off at a good pace, and then finish strong. But how I do that, the only way I'm going to be able to execute that is if I'm not in that super hyper state and go off the blocks really fast, and then lose all my energy after the first 50. It's all about kind of, for me, all about just pacing it as perfectly as possible. And that depends on the event, it depends on the person. Like, there's so many factors that come into it, really.
So when you're in the call room, then are you one of those people that just likes to be completely chilled? Do you like talking to other people, or do you just want to get into a meditative state yourself?
Yeah, I'm pretty easygoing, to be honest. I don't mind talking to other people, but I'm just as happy sat there, kind of chilling. As long as I know the basics of my plan, I feel confident that I can execute them in a way that is going to be beneficial, then yeah, I know I'm onto a winner, really. I
Mm.
can't really control what everyone else does, just have to focus on myself.
No, I absolutely, completely agree with that. And what is your self-talk throughout? So it was kind of joking with the lady who asked this question, saying, like, we really hope actually what you do is you sing throughout a race, but actually, are there certain things you're telling yourself through each length, or are you literally just singing like a McFly song or something?
No, to be honest, I never really think about what goes on in my head when I'm racing. I think it is just literally like going through that plan and taking it
Mm.
not one length at a time, and then obviously focusing around turns and stuff like that. So it's pretty boring, pretty dull, but it seems to be what works for me.
Yeah, no, that sounds good. Do you count strokes on each length?
Occasionally, yeah. So I know roughly more for my best performances. I know roughly what my stroke counts are, so I think it's in and around 30 to 32, depending on first length and last length and how far I go off the walls and stuff like that. But not always. I think have done in the past, and to be honest, I think some of my best performances I have counted my strokes, but um,
Mm.
I wouldn't say I do it every single time.
You know what? It's an interesting thing because I've never counted strokes, more from the point of view that I just, especially long course, if you count in per length, A, I think I'd lose count, and and B, I think I'd just lose all my focus on what I'm actually supposed to be doing. And I think
Yeah,
I'd care more about stroke than actually swimming properly. So
yeah,
it's not something I've done before. I don't know kind of what your. It sounds like you like to kind of clear the mind a little bit.
yeah. I think counting strokes is good, but you have to be your default has to be like the best version of your stroke. So like you have to just practice like perfect technique throughout training, um, until like that becomes, like I said, your default, and you can just do that without thinking, and then that once you do that, then counting strokes then becomes like the next step or like an added phase if you want to really understand how much distance per stroke you're getting, but also at the same
Mm.
time, if you have this stroke out in mind, and then the first length you're supposed to be doing 34 strokes and you're doing 38, then it's also not letting that kind of get in your head and
Yeah.
ruin your race, really.
Mhm. No, for sure. Brilliant question here. How do you swim backstroke in a straight line when you're swimming outdoors?
That's such a difficult one. For me, keep an eye on the lane rope, like to the side. It's easier in
Yeah.
some pools than others. I used to really like racing at Rome because they had railings over the pool, but they've recently taken them down. They took them down for Europeans last year. Major competitions as well. Sometimes they have like a camera wire that the camera just goes up and down. If you're lucky enough to be in a middle lane, then sometimes you can follow that. But yeah, the default is always good. Look, keep one little eye on the lane rope,
Yeah,
just
yeah.
in your peripheral.
That's a good tactic. This is quite a good question actually, because you mentioned this is something you're now working on, and it's what breathing drills do you do so that when you turn and you're on the water phase, you can hold your breath.
Oh, what was that? Sorry.
Sorry. So what breathing drills do you do to help you hold your breath when you're on your underwaters in a race?
Um, so we do a lot of kind of um, 25s underwater. We did some this morning, a little bit of hypoxic work. So, for example, we did um, uh, this morning 4 100s pull, last 25 hypoxic, and that might not always be the full length, but just trying to like put yourself under a little bit of pressure in terms of holding that breath, but also like within a session, say you're doing a 4K session in a short course pool, what's that, 160 lengths? Is that right?
Mm, I
About
think
that.
so.
You've got 160 opportunities to push off a wall. Like you can use that to practice breath holding, practice underwater fly kicks. It
Mm.
doesn't necessarily have to be a specific drill. And as you get like kind of get into main sets, then you work on doing that under pressure, and gradually it just becomes more and more natural, and then you'll be able to do it in a race.
Yeah, no, that sounds good. Well, when you mentioned the hypoxic work on your last length on those hundreds in training, it does just trying to explain that. Does that mean that you stay underwater for as long as possible, or does it mean when you're actually swimming, you're holding your breath?
It varies. Sometimes it is like push off the wall and go underwater. Sometimes it's swimming just three styles holding your breath. But it kind of both have the same effect. I guess doing the underwater work is a little bit more specific, but holding your breath while swimming is also going to be beneficial.
Yeah, no, sounds good. Good question here. Do you have any aspirations on taking on the IM? Because apparently you are a very good IM swimmer, and might that include having a faster breaststroke leg?
So I used to do a little bit of IM when I was younger, and then didn't do it for a few years, and then revisited it ISL 2021 because they introduced a rule whereby you can get points at the 200. So if you're first to 200, you get extra points. So I would just go out, absolutely batter the fly in the back, get the points, and then hold on for as long as I can. And I do enjoy racing IM. It's something a bit different, but I just don't think my breaststroke's good enough to swim it competitively on a world or even national level. Um, I don't know. It's something that I might do in season a little bit more, and if it looks like it's gonna, if it's improving, then potentially. But it's definitely more focused around the backstroke for the next year at least. Maybe post Olympics we can play around with a little bit of fly, or maybe IM. But yeah, I do enjoy swimming it though. Definitely nice to do something different.
Yeah, no, for sure. What sort of food do you eat in the build up to a race? So just imagine maybe the week before or the 3 or 4 days before. So I guess the question really is, do you load up, or is there anything different, or is it just very much the same?
Fairly similar to what I normally eat, I would say. Like certainly in the hours leading up to a final. So after the heat, get a hit of protein and carbohydrates straight after, um, whether that's like a shake or a bar or whatever, and then go back, have a big meal, quite carbohydrate rich, again with a little bit of protein, and then before about 3 hours before the final, I would have another carb hit, something like a noodle pot or a bit more pasta or rice or something like that, basically. So a lot of carbs, but like not overdoing it, obviously, but enough to kind of make sure that you're ready and fueled, and also recovered from whatever else you might have been doing, whether that be training or heats.
Mm. Just thinking in terms of forget racing, just in your normal kind of day to day life and your training, what's your kind of go to meal that you always enjoy?
So I like simple, so I just go like chicken pasta, fajitas, stuff like that. Again, just trying to get that protein in
Yeah.
for recovery and carbohydrates in for fuel, along with a bit more added fruit and veg
Mm.
for day to day, just to ensure that we're not getting ill.
Yeah, no, that sounds good. Slightly somber question, but then we end with a great question. What's your biggest regret in swimming so far?
Oh, that's a good question. I don't know actually. Um, I don't know if I have any regrets, to be
I was going to
honest.
say
I
you
mean,
can't say nothing. Yeah.
there's definitely things I would have done differently had I known now. I know what I know now, but at the same time, like those bad performances, those plateaus, whatever it might be, I've learned a lot from them. So I know for the future. So I don't think I would necessarily change anything, go back and change anything. So I can't really say I've got any particular regrets.
No, I like that answer. I'm glad that you don't, because I think regrets can be silly sometimes. So go on, then. Last question is much more positive. What's been your biggest achievement, or the thing that you're most proud of from your swimming career so far?
The thing that always sticks with me is the 2019 World Championships, and winning the gold in the 4x1 medley relay. I don't think it was my best performance by any means, but watching Duncan come back on that last 100
Mm.
was absolutely phenomenal. Like to be there and be part of that was something very special, and obviously like my first World Championship um, gold medal. So yeah, that's something that will always stick with me.
No, sounds fantastic. Well, that's it for questions. Yeah, thank you very much. Really, really appreciate you coming on. Sounds like you've had a fantastic break, a much needed break, and yeah, you're feeling refreshed again, ready to go, and really excited to see you racing again. Yeah, can't wait.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to it. Thank you very much.
No, thank you too. Cheers.
Cheers.